Throughout history, 80 national teams have qualified for the World Cup, but if we look at the current FIFA ranking, which are the 10 worst countries that have ever played it? That's what we'll see in this video. Starting with the 10th lowest ranked country that has ever played in a World Cup, Angola. Angola never even managed to go far in the Africa Cup of Nations, but in the qualification race for 2006, they managed to finish on top of their group, even knocking Nigeria out. So they qualified and ended up in a group with Portugal, Mexico and Iran. Everyone thought they were gonna be humiliated, but against Ronaldo's Portugal, they only suffered one goal, then they drew with Mexico and drew with Iran. Angola came very close to reaching the round of 16, but after that, their national team declined a lot, now sitting at the 85th position in the ranking. But if Angola is already in a bad position in the ranking, we're gonna see much worse national teams. And Angola actually had a decent performance, but the next country was the most humiliated in the history of the tournament. It's a country most people can't even point out on a map. It's literally smaller than the state of New Jersey, El Salvador. And even being small, they managed to qualify for 2 World Cups. But in both, they finished as the worst team of the tournament. In 1970, El Salvador played it for the first time, but lost all their group stage matches, conceding a total of 9 goals. And if that was bad, in the year 1982 it was much worse. In their first match, they faced Hungary and suffered the biggest defeat in World Cup history, 10-1. In just one game, they conceded more goals than they had in their previous campaign. And then they also lost to Belgium and lost to Argentina, finishing with 13 goals conceded in just 3 matches. After that, El Salvador never qualified again, and now they're sitting at 87th place in the ranking. But if that's bad, the next country is in an even worse position, Haiti. Yeah, Haiti once played in a World Cup. It happened because they managed to beat Mexico in the qualifiers, securing their spot for the 1974 edition. But they ended up conceding 14 goals in just 3 games. In a group with Poland, Argentina and Italy, Haiti started by surprising everyone, scoring the opener against Italy. However, the Italians turned it around to 3-1, but Haiti showed they could compete. That was until the match against Poland, which was a disaster. They suffered a 7-0 defeat. Haiti was eliminated. Then their final group stage game was against Argentina, where they suffered another loss by 4-1. After that, they never returned to a World Cup, sitting now at 90th place in the FIFA ranking. But if Haiti is a small country, the next one is the 2nd largest in population and the 4th largest in land area. Still, it's ranked even lower, which is China. But even standing very low, they've already played in a World Cup, making a campaign so bad that they don't even want to remember it. In 2002, the tournament was held in South Korea and Japan, so since those 2 countries were already qualified as hosts, it opened up a place for other Asian teams to grab a spot. That's when China took advantage of it, having one of the easiest paths to qualify. But the World Cup is on a whole different level, so in their debut against Costa Rica, China lost 2-0. And the worst part is that Costa Rica was the easiest opponent they would face. The next match was against none other than Brazil, who absolutely demolished them by 4-0. And if that wasn't enough, their final game was against Turkey, who started by scoring twice in less than 10 minutes. China was being embarrassed, so against Turkey they managed to hold the score for a little while, but eventually conceded another goal. In 3 matches, China scored 0 goals and conceded 9. Since then, they have never made it back to a World Cup, and now sits at the 94th position in the ranking. But now let's go even lower, from 94th in the ranking to now surpassing the 100th position. And if China is huge, this country is so tiny that's literally the smallest in area to ever play in the tournament. Located in the Caribbean near Venezuela, this country is so small that just look at its size compared to Europe, and now check it out compared to the United States. And it's home to just 1 million people, Trinidad and Tobago. Their neighbors, Venezuela, never played a World Cup. So how did they get to football's biggest tournament? Well, in 2005, Trinidad and Tobago managed to finish 4th in the CONCACAF qualifiers. So they went to the Interconfederation playoffs, defeated Bahrain, and qualified for the 2006 World Cup. But they were unlucky, ending up in a group with Paraguay, Sweden, and England. So everyone expected them to be destroyed. But in the first match against Sweden with Ibrahimovic, they managed to defend perfectly and it ended in a draw. After that impressive start, they faced England, where surprisingly they were managing to hold a score. Until the 83rd minute, Peter Crouch scored a header. And before the final whistle, Gerrard scored another one. It was a huge disappointment, but they still had a chance to qualify if they defeated Paraguay. However, they conceded twice. After that World Cup, Trinidad and Tobago's national team didn't evolve like other countries in the region. They lost quality and now sits at 101st in the FIFA ranking. But in that World Cup, there was an even weaker country that we'll talk about later. Now, if Trinidad and Tobago is ranked 101st, the next country is ranked much lower than that. But unlike them, this country is the 4th largest in population, with over 200 million people. Indonesia. Indonesia has some bizarre defeats in its history. In June 2025, they lost 6-0 to Japan, and in 2012, they even suffered a 10-0 defeat to Bahrain. However, they've already qualified for a World Cup, and they did it without having to play a single match. Back in the 1930s, FIFA wanted to expand the World Cup to include more continents, but for the 1938 edition, just 2 Asian countries were able to fight for a spot: Japan and Indonesia, which at the time was still called the Dutch East Indies. But Japan withdrew, so they ended up securing their spot without playing. However, the 1938 World Cup started right in a round of 16. It had just a knockout stage, where Indonesia faced Hungary. So Indonesia didn't stand a chance. They conceded 4 goals in the first half and 2 more in the second, losing 6-0. Today, Indonesia sits at the 118th position. But if Indonesia was humiliated, the next country knocked out Italy and almost reached the semi-finals of the World Cup. But today, they are doing very badly. North Korea. In 2010, North Korea managed to qualify, ending up in a group with Brazil, Portugal and Ivory Coast, so everyone expected a complete humiliation. But in their first match against Brazil, they actually scored a goal, losing by only 2-1. The North Korean government got so excited about it that they decided to broadcast the second game against Portugal live. But it didn't go well, because they lost 7-0. And then they lost against Ivory Coast 3-0. But if North Korea played badly in 2010, in 1966 they played the World Cup for the first time, and North Korea ended up in a situation where they had to play the final group stage match against Italy, where the winner would advance to the knockout stage. Everyone thought Italy was through, until the forward, back to X, scored, and North Korea defeated them 1-0 to qualify for the knockout stage. That was crazy. The knockout stage started right in the quarterfinals, where against Eusebio's Portugal, they opened a 3-0 lead in just 25 minutes. They were just one step away from the semi-finals. But then Portugal managed to score 5 goals, ending North Korea's incredible run. Today, North Korea is far from being nearly as good as they were, sitting today at 119th place. So now we've reached the 3rd worst team from the current FIFA ranking that has ever played in the World Cup. It's a country in the coast of Africa, with an area more than 4 times smaller than UK. Togo. Togo managed to qualify as a huge underdog. They had the forward Adebayor, and in the African qualifiers, they managed to beat Senegal. So Togo went for their first and only World Cup, ending up in a very tough group with South Korea, Switzerland and France. If they wanted to have a slight chance, they had to at least defeat South Korea, but they ended up losing 2-1. Now the next opponent was Switzerland, but Togo lost 2-0. So against Zidane's France, it ended in another defeat. Togo had their best generation of players ever, but it wasn't enough. After that, they never produced a generation as good, and they kept declining, now sitting at 120th in the FIFA ranking. But there are 2 teams even worse than them. The next country is almost 20 positions lower than Togo. It's simply unbelievable that a team like this ever made it to the World Cup. It's a country so small that's 5 times smaller than Portugal and more than 13 times smaller than UK. Kuwait. Kuwait is a wealthy country, but poor in football. Ranked 138th, they are lower than countries like Botswana, Central African Republic and Gambia. Even so, they have qualified for a World Cup, creating one of the most controversial moments, with even their prince invading the field. In 1982, Kuwait was managed by Pereira, a coach that years later would win the World Cup with Brazil. There in their first match against Czechoslovakia, they managed to surprise everyone, earning a draw. Then in the next game against France, the biggest controversy happened. When France was leading 3-1, someone blew a whistle from the stands and the Kuwait team stopped playing, which made France score another goal. So Prince Fahad, the sheikh in charge of football in Kuwait, ran onto the field to argue with the referee to have the goal cancelled, and the referee did what he asked. Kuwait still lost the match, but just the fact that the Sheikh influenced the referee's decision caused huge controversy, and in their last game they faced England, who defeated them. Kuwait was eliminated, and after their peak in the 1980s, they kept declining, sitting today at 138th in the FIFA ranking. But Kuwait's position in the ranking is still good if we compare it to the next country, which is the lowest ever to play a World Cup. They are so bad that in 2025 they even lost 4-0 to Trinidad and Tobago, but they have already eliminated an European country from the World Cup, Cuba. They are so low that they are closer to San Marino than to Togo in the ranking, but Cuba has played in the World Cup. They qualified because back in the 1930s, countries didn't value the tournament as much, and all CONCACAF teams but Cuba withdrew from the qualifiers, so they ended up becoming the only team from Central America. But they surprised everyone. The tournament began as a straight knockout, and in the round of 16, Cuba eliminated Romania. By 2-1, they made it into the quarterfinals. Now the next game was against Sweden. Cuba was ready to go to the semifinals, but they were defeated 8-0. Nowadays, Cuba is very far from playing another World Cup, sitting at the 166th position. So what did you think of this video? If you enjoyed it, I think you're gonna like this one too. So thanks for watching and bye!